So, good evening, everyone. Respected Principal Sir, today's resource person, Dr. Joydeep Baruah Sir. On behalf of the organizing committee, I welcome all the participants, delegates to the special lecture series, the last session of the special lecture series on health, economy, education, and career. So, today's resource person of this lecture series is Dr. Joydeep Baruah Sir. On behalf of the organizing committee, I welcome you, sir, to this special lecture series on health, economy, education, and career. So, Dr. Joydeep Baruah Sir, he is an associate professor, Homeopathy Das Institute of Social Science and Research. Joydeep Baruah Sir, not only an economist, he is a good scholar and closely associated with the policymakers in the area of development economics, labor economics, regional development, poverty and inequality, quantitative economics, etc. So he has lots of impactful publications in different reputed national and international journals. So if anyone like to visit his works, they can visit. This is available in the Google Scholar. So, sir, we are happy to have like you with us, and we know that right now the economy has passed through a very critical condition. The GDP growth rate has declined in all over the world. In India, it is fluctuating in between 3 to 3.5%. Both the formal sector as well as the informal sector are facing losses. Agriculture to industry are not free from the impact of the pandemic COVID-19. Raising unemployment rate, reverse migration of the laborers to their own states, mainly the new generation migration. The world economy is right now imbalanced. So that is why in such critical conditions, the pandemic touches every dimensions of the economy. So in such critical condition, we need to discuss about the impact of this pandemic on our economy. And that is why we inviting renowned economist, our pride of Northeast India, to share his experience and to give some policy measures regarding this, especially to Assam economy, regarding the issue of COVID-19 and economy. Sir, once again, I welcome you, and I like to hand over this session to you. Now the session is yours, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and let me congratulate the organizers for this wonderful occasion and arranging this kind of good dissemination session on a very important topic. So what I will try to do, I will be speaking basically about Assam economy, and then given the backdrop of COVID-19. I will be speaking for say about 40-45 minutes, and then if somebody wants to put any question, I'll be happy to answer the questions that will be coming during my deliberation and also after the deliberation. So I will be trying to give this this whole deliberation through some PowerPoint presentation. So I will request the organizers to allow me to share my screen so that I can share the presentation with the participants. Surajit? Hello.
So now you can share your screen.
Okay.
Okay.
No, no, you are sharing your screen. You have not stopped it probably. So
Proceed. You have to allow his screen to be shared.
Sir, you can now share your screen.
okay.
PowerPoint. Okay, sir. It was muted, that is why.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Now it's coming.
Okay, sir. No problem.
Okay. So what I will be doing, I'll be speaking about the COVID-19 and economy of Assam and the issues and roads ahead. I will be focusing on 4 basic points, and this is actually the structure of the presentation. First, I'll be talking about the perspective, that you need to have a completely clear perspective to look at the crisis. And then you need to think about economic consequences of COVID. I'll be specifically talking about 3 consequences. One is, of course, macroeconomic consequences, wherein I'll be talking about the growth, then employment and poverty and public finance. Then there are some sector specific consequences where I'll be talking about agriculture, industry and services. And also there are some overarching concerns which are also impacted by COVID-19, which includes the issues of flood, issues of gender, issues of inequality, issues of infrastructure. And then the third point is really very important to understand, that how do I see this whole consequences? I will try to argue that these consequences are actually a continuum of what was happening during the pre-COVID period. And then since there was already a crisis built up during the pre-COVID period, the COVID has actually made the things worse. So therefore, this impact or consequences of COVID-19 is to be seen as a continuum rather than a specific episode only coming after COVID-19 has erupted. And then given this framework, we will try to see how we can actually think about some ways out, that how do we come out of this crisis. So these are the 4 points I'll be talking about, and I will try to be very brief in my discussion, and then so that we can have some more time to share our concerns, thoughts, and clearing doubts, and also putting and answering some questions and answers. Let me begin by outlining some of the very important things that we should keep in mind when we see this crisis. First point we should actually try to see is that it is more of a consequence I'll be talking about rather than impact. What is the difference between consequences and impact? Impact is something which is attributable. Suppose this something happens because of COVID. If the COVID is not there, then these things will not be there. So therefore, this attribution thing is very important to understand the impact. The impact is what can be attributed to COVID-19. But consequences, we need not have a kind of straightforward that kind of attribution. So it will be very difficult to say that whatever is happening, it is only because of COVID. For instance, suppose if we say that suppose employment is going to fall or unemployment is going to rise because of COVID, then impact will be requiring that what percentage of increase will be because of COVID. So this is going to be a very difficult task. So I will not do that. I will actually speak more about the consequences without attributing that this is typically coming from COVID. And that is precisely why I have said that these consequences are to be seen as a continuum. That means it started before COVID and it actually aggravated after COVID. Second point, which is important to understand, that these whole consequences are multidimensional in nature. We have seen three major consequences. One is the public health consequences, that we know that this is hugely infectious. It has given rise to many deaths. It has also almost pushed the public health system of almost all countries, including the most developed countries, into a virtual collapse. So therefore, there is a crisis in the front of public health. Second front is obvious. I'll be concentrating on this. The economic front, that people's life and livelihood has been greatly affected by this crisis, COVID-19, and therefore the economic crisis is one of the most important aspects. And also there are some social dimensions to it. It can be a consequence of the social consequences can include the things starting from law and order to mental health. So therefore it can have other dimensions also. For instance, suppose the children and people with special needs, the single, the aged people, all those things are hugely important, and therefore it has got a very important social dimensions. So three dimensions are critically important. One is public health, second one is economic, third one is social. And it is not that they are not connected, they are hugely interconnected also. So therefore it is really a multidimensional perspective that we should be having when we see the consequences of COVID-19. And how does it happen? I will concentrate basically on economy. So when we see how economy is actually being affected, then we should actually look at the functioning of the economy. So I would argue, or you will know that the modern economy is actually based on how the wave of circulation operates. This wave of circulation means that everything is moving. Money is moving, people are moving, capital is moving, goods and services are moving, and these are actually the things which we should actually see the things, and that is why we have a wave of circulation. And therefore the functioning of the economy is like a wave of circulation, and this wave of circulation depends on two things: that what is the ease of this circulation, that how smoothly this circulation takes place, and the speed of circulation, how quickly this circulation takes place. And the whole pandemic has resulted in this it has actually adversely affected both. It has affected the ease of circulation as well as the speed of circulation. So therefore we talk about the two different types of recovery. One is called V-shaped recovery, the second one is called U-shaped recovery. The V-shaped recovery is one where there is a crisis, it goes down, and immediately when the crisis ends, immediately the economy recovers. That is the V-shaped recovery. But it is not likely to happen in that way. But what we are expecting is more of a U-shaped recovery curve, where it is going down and it will remain flat for quite some time, and then it will move up. So therefore now the question is that how this flat part can be reduced by policies like fiscal policy, monetary policy, through stimulus and all these things, and how quickly we can actually restore the circulation. And that is precisely the policy which is trying to be attempted. So therefore how this is getting affected, the wave of circulation is getting affected in terms of ease of circulation and speed of circulation. So obviously the policy therefore is to restore the ease and speed. So this is how we will look at the things. But at the same time, we should also think about that this consequences as a cumulative process, and I can see the 4 levels of accumulation or aggregation happening. First one is a disease response accumulation. Disease response accumulation is something which is very important to understand. This is a very peculiar kind of disease. The disease is not only affected by the disease, but it is also affected by the response to contain the disease. For instance, lockdown, for instance, social distancing, and all these things actually adversely affect the ease and speed of the circulation, economic circulation, and that is why it is not only the disease, but as well as the response to contain the disease is also important. So therefore, it is whatever it is, whatever we find a consequence, it is basically result of both disease and also the response to the disease. So therefore, this is what we call aggregation or cumulation at the level of disease response things. Next one is very important to understand. There is a cumulative process of spatial means space. It is across space. As I have said, that it is actually the economy is running through a web of circulation. This circulation is not limited to a territorial boundary specific. It goes well beyond the boundary. For instance, suppose the circulation that is happening in Assam is not dependent on Assam itself. It also dependent on India. It depends on other parts. For instance, tea. For instance, the oil and all these things. These are global. Something is happening globally, so we are getting impact on our local economy. So therefore, there's a spatial, dimension to it. So therefore, this cumulation or aggregation is happening across the space. If something is happening in Delhi, something is happening in Mumbai, the impact or result or consequence will be also felt in the domestic economy. Even if something is happening in other parts, for instance, suppose China, or if it is happening in Taiwan, or if it is happening in Brazil, some part of the influence will come to our domestic economy, because we live in an age of globalization where everything is connected. So therefore, there is a consequence which is cumulatively formed through a spatial dimension. There is a temporal dimension. There is a dimension of time. What has happened earlier is going to have, be affected later on also. If something was bad during pre-COVID period, the similar thing can be expected in the post-COVID period also. And there are also sectoral things, because something is happening in agriculture, it will going to have some kind of consequence on industry and services. So therefore, the consequence that will be talked about will be seen more as a multidimensional and aggregate consequence. And this aggregation is taking place at least at the 4 levels. And last point, which is important to understand today, is that we are in a state of uncertainty. There's a huge uncertainty involved. Nobody can tell that exactly what is going to happen, exactly how long it will last, exactly when the vaccine or drugs will come and effectively come. There are reports that some drugs have come, but we need to have an effective thing. And therefore, there's a lot of uncertainties. We do not really know many things at this time. So therefore, what we can imagine different scenarios, that what will happen in the best condition, what will happen in the moderate condition, what will happen in the worst condition. So therefore, given these uncertainties, what we will try to do, we will try to put forward some scenarios and see how these consequences will emerge. So therefore, this is to begin with. Let us be very clear on the perspective. First point, we are talking about consequences rather than impact. We are not going to attribute anything. Second thing, we are talking about multidimensional consequences, but I will concentrate basically on economic. And I do recognize that there are interconnections between public health, economy, and social functioning. I see that how this is going to affect. It is going to affect because in a way where the circulation of fundamental economic circulations are going to be affected, and this is affecting the ease and speed of this circulation. And these consequences are aggregative in nature, at least at 4 levels. And there is there are a lot of uncertainties, and therefore what we will do, we will have different scenarios and try to find out the consequences based on those scenarios. With this initial remark on the perspective, let me discuss the macroeconomic consequences with special focus on Assam. I'll be talking about 3 basic ideas. One is how the gross domestic product of the state is going to be affected, and then growth is going to be affected, which takes care of the aggregate supply part. Secondly, I'll be talking about the employment, income, and vulnerability to poverty, which takes care of aggregate demand side of the economy. And lastly, I'll be talking about how the state's public finance, how the state own resources, and also the central transfers are going to be affected, and then what will be the consequence of that effect we will see that as well. So therefore, these are the three important points that I'll be trying to discuss. And let me begin by looking at the macroeconomic, the growth scenarios. What I will try to do, we will try to, you know, that the Indian economy is being projected at three levels. One, that there is a idea that Indian economy will grow either 0% or it will be negative. That is the worst case. And there is a case which is more common, even the government of India also suggesting this, that Indian economy in the next coming financial year or fiscal is going to be growing around 2%, which is also shared by government of India, which is also shared by IMF and World Bank. This is a most commonly discussed thing, that how Indian economy is growing. And then there are some optimal agencies, particularly the credit agencies, which are giving some growth focus around 4% for India. Now, India's growth is actually a composite of the state growths. There are the 33 states are there, and you have combined this 33 states growth, and there is a central taxes and all these things. So that constitute India's whole the GDP. Now, if we look at historical data, then we will find that Assam's economy, share of Assam's economy in India is around 1.6%. So therefore, whatever is growing in growth and then domestic product of India, the 1.6% of that is going to be our share, given the historical data. So if we apply that that share and simulate that what will be the growth for Assam, given these three different conditions, we get something like this. That if you see the trend line, that the blue is the trend line. In 2017-18, the Assam economy, constant prices, Assam economy grew at 9.4%. The next year it was 6.9%, and then the last year it was 5.8%. And if you see that, as I have said, there was it should be seen as a continuum. There was a decline, and if we allow that decline to happen, then this year we should be having actually 3.7% growth had there not been any COVID-19. But if you have that COVID-19, then this growth is going to be even lower. So you get three different conditions: the red condition, then the red condition, then the yellow condition, and the green condition, giving the 0%, 2%, 4%, applying that 1.6% growth rate. Then we find that Assam economy is going to suffer a huge loss, this thing, because the growth rate is going to be negative if the economy is not growing at the country level. And that can be seen as a gap between what can be expected and then what is actually happening, given the three scenarios of growth in India. And this is the gap can be said as an impact, that this is what is the impact of COVID-19 on the growth rate, that if there is no COVID, then we were supposed to be growing at around 3.7% given the trend, but now it is going to be actually minus 1.5%, which is negative growth. And this is when this will happen if the India is actually growing at 0% or negative percent. It can be even worse, but at least for the time being, we are seeing that probably the economy of Assam is going to have a negative growth rate. If we see this thing in a sectoral way, what we have done, this was done for the government of Assam. We did a study, and then we tried to see how this lockdown. As I have said, the disease and response are both important to understand the consequences. What we have done, we have taken the first 2 phases of lockdown, because by the time third phase began, most of the things were open. And the first phase of lockdown last for 21 days. Second phase last for 19 days. And then we have used this the potential contribution. We have arrived these figures from the last year's figure, the advanced estimate figure, and we have seen that if we look at the last line, this actually gives you the idea that daily basis, per day, the Assam economy actually is increased by 947 crore per day. So therefore, if you have a loss, and that intensity of loss can be 90%, 80%, so you can have some coefficients for this loss coefficients here for two phases, and then we can find out lastly that how this how if you can see these things, then we can see that okay, this is where how economy is growing, or how economy is the running that during that period of time. And we have got some loss of during that phase, loss of 27,460 crore rupees during that period, which actually gives you the idea that that how this is happening, that 8% of GSDP was lost only during that period of time. So therefore, the impact of lockdown was such severe that during only 2 months time, about 2 months time, we actually lost 8% of GSDP because of the lockdown itself. And then sectoral distribution you can see in the last column. So therefore, if you have that kind of this actually means a contraction, reduction in the gross domestic product, that the decline in the gross domestic product around 8%. So this 8% will only be during that period. Subsequently, the things will open, then it will be annualized, and that figure, annualized figure, is going to be negative 1.5%, which I have already explained. If we have that kind of a contraction, then it will obviously reduce the employment opportunities, and it will also result in fall in income. And those who know economics, they will understand there is a law called O'Kuhn's law. O'Kuhn's law means that if there is a fall in the GDP, there is a rise in the unemployment rate. So since we have a fall and negative growth in the GDP for the economy of Assam, so obviously one can expect that employment going to be falling, and the income, consequently income is also going to decline substantially. And in other words, the unemployment is going to rise. So but however, we can foresee a worsening of employment situation given that kind of a contraction, massive contraction and negative growth rate, and we can expect increase in unemployment rate. But however, the magnitude and process of this unemployment will depend on the nature of the labor market and employment situation in the state. Let me very briefly discuss these 2 points, that what is the employment and labor market situation in Assam. And I have taken this periodic labor force survey data 2017 and 18. If you look at rural Assam, then you will find that most of the laborers are actually self-employed, either in agriculture or in non-agriculture, and casual. These constitutes most of the labor force in the rural area. Similarly, you get the huge percentage of more than 50%, half of the population, that is self-employed and casual workers in urban labor market. 42.3% self-employed and casual labor 7.4%. So if you have, and roughly there are 1 crore, 1/3 of the population are actually in a labor workforce, and therefore if you can calculate this whole thing, and you can see what is the situation. Then what we have done, the present estimate, based on this present estimate, we have found that casual employment in the state is 19 lakh, self-employment in non-agriculture 36 lakh, self-employment in agriculture 20 lakh, regular salary 25 lakhs, and then there is also a figure which is coming from the government side, that there will be some around 10 lakh returned migrants. Nobody knows exactly what is going to be the number, but this is what has been popularly been informed by the government. So therefore, let us take that. So this is the situation, and number of workers we consider which is highly vulnerable can be worked out. Casual labor, we see that around this, these are the people who will be impacted hugely by this lockdown and the disease, because these are casual in nature. people will getting this employment casually, and these are in different sectors. So around 80-85% of these people will either lose their jobs because they will not be employed, they will not be able to find employment, and people will be reluctant to employ them either because of the fear of the infection and all these things. So therefore there will be a vulnerable group comes close to around 16 lakh out of 19 lakh. Self-employed in non-agriculture, we see that some vulnerable percentages around 29 lakh out of 36 lakh. Self-employment in agriculture, it's not going to be affected very largely. Only those who are agricultural laborers will be facing some problem to find their employment. I'll come to that subsequently, and we estimate that around 4 lakh people will be affected. Regular salaried, 1/3 of the regular salaried people are actually sort of contractual. They do not have any fixed social security. They do not have paid leave system. So these are the people who will become very vulnerable, and we find that there are around 8 lakh people who will be there facing some problems. So altogether we have 67 lakh people who can become very vulnerable. And then you can create some scenarios like 10% job loss, 20% job loss, and 30% job loss, and we get an unemployment rate increasing from current level of 8% to 16% to 21% to 27%. So 27% means every third person employed will become unemployment, which is pretty high. And this is not at all impossible. This can happen if the situation worsens and continue to be like this. So therefore, what is important to understand is that this whole idea that around 30 lakh unemployment people will be there in the economy, the major challenge will be to keep them engaged, and therefore two perspective planning can be worked out. One way is to limit the release of labor and employee. That means let us not create conditions which is not giving the job loss situation, and then if there is a job loss, then create avenues to absorption. So therefore two-pronged strategy will be there. First, let us allow them to have their jobs continue. That is one, and so that this unemployment does not increase. And the second thing, if there is an increase, then we need to have some avenues coming up to absorb whatever been released. So these are the two things. I'll be coming to that, which I say that this is a support and relief combination, and this is what will be needed, and I will discuss this thing further. So but the point is that if there is a contraction happening in the economy to the tune of 8% during 2 months, which is annualized to negative 1.5%, then there will be a subsequent increase in the unemployment, which will be around double the current level or triple the current level. So that is going to happen, and we need to think about it. If that is happening, then what will be the impact on poverty? For instance, if there is no employment and their income will fall, and obviously poverty will rise. And then we have used some NSS, the data 68 round NSS so data, unit level data, and we have simulate this thing that what if there is a fall by 5% in income, there is a 10% fall in income, and there is a 15% fall in income. And we have seen that if there is a fall in income to the tune of 15%, then Assam's poverty, which is currently at 32%, will increase to 50%. That means the half of the population will be pushed to the level of poverty if that kind of a contraction happens. And then we have seen some very interesting figures also. If you look at the casual labor, which is very important for policy analysis, if you look at the 2.4 casual labor, the poverty currently at the level of casual labor is 68%. Even if there is a small fall by 5%, this is going to be increased to 81%. All right, and then there are subsequent fall will not lead to much of the poverty. That means that these are the most vulnerable people, which are slightly above the poverty line. Very insignificant fall in income will push them to the poverty. So this is one kind of situation. The second kind of situation comes to the self-employment. In the agriculture, for instance, if there is a small decline in their income, poverty rate is not going to be impacted very much. But if there is a substantial income fall, then poverty is going to be increased. So therefore you get two different groups of people, and then you have two different consequences. One, for some section, very small the decrease in income will result in massive poverty, but for others, you have to have a very big fall in their income to make them poor. So therefore, accordingly, you need to have two different sets of policies to take care, and which is, again, I will come to this. One I call relief measure, and then other one I call support measure. I will come to that in a last slide. So this is this last slide is actually coming from the analysis that I will be presenting, and clearly it is showing that we need two different measures. One relief measure, and other one is support measures, because the policies are to be different for different sections of people. Now, I will come to the last point of the macroeconomic consequence, that is the state's public finance. Now, if you look at the Assam state public finance, then you will find that the more than 50% of the money actually comes in the form of central government transfer. And there are three forms of central government transfer. One is the share of taxes, which is the share of divisible pool. Second one is the Finance Commission revenue deficit grant. And third component is actually central sector schemes, different central sector schemes. So through these three components, we get around 60% of our resources. So for the own resources concerned, for Assam, we have a very low tax GDP ratio in the country as a whole. 16 to 18% of GDP comes back to the government as a tax of different kinds. And as I have said, the GDP itself is going to decline. So therefore, percentage of that decline GDP is also going to decline. So what we can expect that government of India's resource will be falling substantially if there is no growth. So therefore, if that is the case, the 15 Finance Commission, which starts from this year, gives a share to the states as 41%, which is actually 1% less than the 14 Finance Commission. That means whatever tax has been collected, 41% will be given to the states. Earlier it was 42%. So 1% already declined. And then whatever is the total pool, that is also going to decline. So therefore, the Assam share is out of that, Assam share is 1.131%, which is lower. So therefore, what we can say that this whole transfer, either through taxes or grant or CSS, is going to be very, very less this time. And therefore, we can simulate this growth situation, and then we can have the situation like this. And you can see that how this situation will see. If India grows at 0%, 2%, and 4%, then we will be having a total revenue loss up to the extent of 20%. If you look at the this year's budget, it is around 1 lakh crore budget. So therefore, we are going to lose out some 20,000 crore. That means around 20% revenue loss. It's a huge loss for a state like Assam. And therefore, this impact for this entire fiscal is going to be very, very huge. So what I have discussed till now is that how Assam economy, macroeconomic impact are going to be felt. One is that there will be decline in the gross domestic product. Growth rate is going to be negative. And secondly, because of that negative growth rate or contraction in the economy, the unemployment problem is going to rise. We are expecting that current level of unemployment is going to be doubled or at least tripled. And if that happens, then poverty is going to be increased as well as a result. And finally, the public finance is going to suffer a lot up to the tune of, say, around 20%. So I think this in a nutshell gives you the gravity of the situation, that kind of things that will happen, or that kind of thing or challenge that we have to face if we want to find a way out. Now, let me come to the sectoral impact. I'm not going to take much time on this because there are many things to be spoken, but 2-3 points are very important if we look at the sectoral, the impact. The agriculture, to my mind, is not going to be affected by this COVID crisis because of certain things, institutional thing. First of all, The Assam agriculture is mostly subsistence farming. We do a single crop, and that is why the lockdown period was not affecting or coming in conflict with our main crop, winter paddy. We are having a very small holding, which prevent us from big commercial farming, and therefore the agriculture directly is not going to be affected, it seems. But there will be indirect impact on agriculture, and that is precisely because of, in terms of agricultural investment. If there is a reduction in income in general, then obviously people will not have enough money to spend for agriculture in the coming season. And also there will be a decline in agricultural investment because of the return migrants. And this part is not being talked about. I have been discussing this in many forums. I've been saying that the remittance is a very important component for Assam economy. And there was a survey by NSSO which says that around per person per month remittance for Assam comes close to around 3,000 to 3,500. So therefore, annual, if you consider 10 lakh person were spending this money to the economy, then there was a huge remittance money was coming to state, which is not going to be happening this time. And part of that, 15 to 16% of that was going for agricultural investment. And we will be seeing that decline in this coming season. So therefore, the agriculture will be having an impact in the indirect form in terms of reduction in the investment, but not directly because of the very nature of the agriculture in the state. Industry, we have mostly two big industries, tea and oil, which are globally linked, and we have already seen some impacts of global volatility both on the oil sector and the tea sector. Other than tea and oil, all the industries are very small MSMEs, 80% of them, and mostly these are unorganized. So therefore, these industries are going to be hugely affected. And TL, oil, of course, are globally linked industries. So therefore, there will be some impact on this. We don't know, as I have said, there are a lot of uncertainties, but it seems that industry front, we have to see some challenges. And services are going to be hugely affected because 90% of state services are either in the informal sector or in the unorganized sector. So therefore, either they are in informal nature or in the unorganized sector. So therefore, all these services will be affected, and it severely affected during the period of lockdown. And therefore, sectorally, we will see mostly services and industry being affected, agriculture being affected indirectly. And we have analyzed different things, and we have seen some common issues. One, that the sectors having the heavy dependency on outside supply chain and markets like livestock are being affected. Sectors without well-developed cross-functional linkages and value chain like fruits and other horticultural products, because we do not have agro-processing industries, so we have to send these things out. So therefore, those sectors are being affected. Sectors which are dominated by few private players like poultry, having no backup source to say, are being also affected. Sectors which are mostly unorganized in terms of production and employment, which include vast range of MSMEs and services, which are badly affected. Sectors which produce and deal with commodities perishable in nature, like vegetables and animal products, like meat, milk, and etc., eggs, milk, etc. So these are sectors which are being affected, and sector where social distancing is very difficult, like suppose saloon, barber shops, fitness industries, personal cares, tourism. So these, in these services are going to be hugely affected. So these are the characters. If we find these characters, then of course these things are going to be affected. Now I will come to some overarching concerns. I'll make 4 points very briefly. We see that there is a huge gender and vulnerability issue here, because if you look at the frontline workers, starting from ASHA to the nurses and doctors, you will find that around 80 to 85% of frontline workers are women, and therefore, they are very vulnerable. And this vulnerability also in the form of other things, because for due to COVID situation, we have neglected, or we have been forced to reduce the activities on RCH, that is reproductive and child health, the routine immunization, routine health care for pregnant women. All these things are now suspended, and therefore it is going to have a huge impact on gender and reproductive health in the coming years. Critical infrastructures, we have huge problems because most of the critical infrastructure projects in the state are externally aided projects and on loan, World Bank loan, the IMF loan, the JICA loan, all these are loan components. If you actually, and if you have a lockdown and then crisis of labor and other things, then these infrastructure projects will see huge cost overrun and time overrun, and then interest will pile up. So therefore it will put a huge pressure on the state exchequer, and therefore this is a very important concern for us. We are seeing also a very important, significant and very important issue in terms of flood management this year. Already one small wave of flood has come. Now we are expecting another 4 to 5 waves of flood. Now this time, how we are going to manage the flood relief is going to be a very big question, because all the district disaster management authority are engaged in COVID, because COVID is under Disaster Management Act. So therefore, now all the schools and other facilities are being used as quarantine facilities. So we do not have any space for establishing relief camps. We do not have any manpower to provide relief. And even if we try to get a space for relief camp, it will be hugely problematic to maintain the social distance, hygiene, and all these things. So we have a double problem of COVID and flood this year, which are going to be huge challenge for the state. And lastly, the inequality, and this is a very important idea that we need to keep in mind. The inequality is something which is going to increase during the pandemic, and all natural disaster and any disaster for that matter. And it is true that virus does not recognize rich and poor. It will affect both rich and as well as poor. But at the same time, we live in a society where the inequality is structural. You see how migrant workers being treated, and how the others have been treated. So therefore, you see that there is a very huge structural inequality component in the society. And even though the virus does not recognize the rich and poor, but they will impact the rich and poor differently. And this will result in increase in inequality. So therefore, gender, infrastructure, flood, and inequality are general concerns which stands out in the time of pandemic. Now, I would argue why it is important to understand this entire thing is actually as a continuum. We know that since 2017-18, we are seeing in India and both in Assam declining growth and increasing unemployment. For last 8 quarters, the Indian economy was decelerating. It was in a recession, and last quarter it has already reduced to 3.1%. So therefore, we were already seeing declining growth and increasing unemployment. Unemployment is supposed to be highest in 45 years, last 45 years. Inflation was not there till December. Now inflation is also started very naturally. It is started coming up. So therefore, it is saying that the whole idea of this declining growth and increasing unemployment are a result of lack of aggregate demand in the economy, which is kind of a Keynesian situation. But it is also important to understand that this aggregate demand, fall in aggregate demand worsens when there is a rising inequality. Because if the general wage level does not increase, and compared to other the components like profit, then there is a huge inequality and transfer of resources from poor to rich. And therefore, if that tendency, as I have said, that inequality is going to worsen, then obviously aggregate demand further going to decline. And this will only mean that declining growth and increasing unemployment will become even acute, and if it will become very serious. And this inequality always increases when there are tendencies, macro tendencies. If there is a shift from wage income to profit income, inequality increases. If there is a shift of income from small to big, there is an inequality increase. If there is a shift from domestic to foreign, there is an increase in inequality. And if there is a production to finance, there is an increase in inequality. Now the point is that the pandemic and the policies as of now are supposed to be increasing this all four tendencies. For instance, I'm just giving you one example. The MSME, the definition of MSME has been revised during the stimulus package. Now the big industries are also qualified as MSMEs. Now consider that if suppose banks supposed to give the loans and credit, concessional credit to the MSMEs, then most of the loans and credit will be taken up by these big agencies or big organizations. So Assam's case will be that 85% of the industries are very small. Their average capital size is around 25 lakhs to 30 lakhs. Workers are actually 7 to 14. So if that kind of an industry is there, then they will not be having any benefit of this system. So therefore, there is a shift from small to big in MSMEs itself. So it will actually increase the inequality, and it will actually reduce the aggregate demand. And therefore, this declining growth and increasing unemployment will even become more acute. And as a result, if we see that this is as a continuum, then we can actually conclude that consequences are going to be very, very serious. It is going to be all pervasive. It will touch everyone's life, and it is going to be far-reaching because it is not immediately going to be solved. It is going to be demonetization impact. Till now, we have not been able to come out. Now, demonetization tried to affect only circulation of money, but this time it is entire wave of circulation getting affected. So therefore, the consequences are going to be serious. It is going to be all pervasive. It is going to touch everybody's life and livelihood, and also it is going to be very, very far-reaching. We are not seeing out, good result in immediate future. Now, the ways out. I will end by this, the slide. The ways out. In the short run, we need to have a combination of relief and support. Now, let me distinguish between relief and support. By relief, I mean that there are some section of people, because of this contraction, economic contraction, decline in growth, rising unemployment, and fall in income, very small change will make them poor. So they should be protected by providing some relief. They should be given some relief, some cash transfers, so that they do not fall into the trap of poverty. So that's relief. Now, there are other sections of people who are not immediately going to be very poor, but there is a possibility that they can actually lose their job. So they have to be supported in terms of allowing them to remain in the job itself. So therefore, suppose those who are self-employed, those who are agriculturally employed, those who are other sectors engaged, they should be given adequate supports in terms of reducing their fixed costs, reducing their working capital costs, etc. They should be given some support so that they do not come out of that engagement. They do not come out of that existing employment and become unemployed. So they should be supported to help them to facilitate to remain in their own existing or prevailing situation. So therefore, we need to have a combination of policies which actually takes care of immediate relief and also the support measures. But most fundamentally, in the long run, we have to see that how the structural and fundamental issues are addressed, and that is the question of inequality. So we need to find some policies to take care of this rising inequality. And maybe it is a time that we should think about in terms of rights to employment, rights to healthcare, rights to social security. Social security is very, very important given the nature of employment in our state. One is, of course, the informal, the unorganized sector and all these things. So therefore, we need to have a very strong social security provision. Even if there is a absence of employment, the people should get at least minimum income or minimum social security from the state. And that essentially will lead to the nature of the state, the questioning the nature of the state itself. Probably we need to think about a new kind of welfare state which recognizes these employment, health, social security as rights of citizens, not as a benefit per se. And that is what is the need of the hour. And but this is a long-term thing, and this long-term thing only can result in some substantive changes, and then as a way out of this situation. So this is all I wanted to speak, and I think I have crossed some 40 minutes time, and then I end here, and then let me take some questions, and then if you have any query or something, I'll be happy to answer the questions and all those things. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your nice presentation, influential presentation. I have got some questions. So yeah, I would like to raise. The first question is that how many of India, how economy of India as well as Assam will be revived after COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, so let me answer this question in this way. Nobody can exactly say that how quickly or how long it will take and how the recovery will take place. This is precisely because we do not have a definite situation as of now. As I have said, that there are uncertainties. We do not know how long this will prevail. We do not know how bad it will become. We do not know whether there will be a subsequent second, third phase of this epidemic coming again. So, and therefore, nothing is very concrete at this moment, and we are facing a lot of uncertainties. It will be very difficult to answer this question because given that uncertainties. So long there is an uncertainty, economy is not going to operate usually. Anybody who is from economics will understand that for the economy to revive and economy to reactivate, we need to have a situation of assurance. We need to have a situation of certainty. Then only economy will behave the way it should behave. So given the uncertainties, even if the banks are ready to give loan, nobody is going to take loan. Even if somebody is, some shops are open, nobody is going to be there because they fear that the infection might happen and so on and so forth. So given the uncertainties, there is no concrete answer that how long it will be like this and how when can we expect a recovery. But thing is that it will be quite long, it seems, and I have talked to, because I was also a member of the task force constituted by the chief minister. And then we have talked to many experts and many people. That public health experts are suggesting that probably it is going to take around 2 years to 3 years time to get things normalized. So therefore, if that is the case, I think we are not seeing immediate recovery as of now.
So another question, sir.
Yeah.
What will the consequence of COVID-19 pandemic on the migrants' laborers return to Assam?
Okay, so I mean, this is a very important topic and everybody is talking about it. Obviously, the return migrants coming back to Assam will have very severe kind of consequences for them. They have already were employed by, they're very important to understand that they were already employed. They have left their job. Some of the people will probably go back and then they will get their jobs. But it seems that most of the people are not going to be immediately going back, or even if they go back, they will not get any employment. So therefore, as I have said, that there will be huge increase in the unemployment rate in the state itself. We have to think about this section of people. There are many ways of doing it. We can think about their employment immediately. Of course, government is talking about NREGA, but NREGA is a very short-term measure. NREGA has flexibility. NREGA has problem also. So therefore, this is okay. So far, the short term is concerned, but in the long term, we need to have a proper manpower planning. And I would suggest that one idea could be that if things revive and economy gets back to its own course, some of the employment avenues will be created, which will be helpful. That is a kind of automatic system. It will generate self-healing, but still we will have a lot of people unemployed. So we need to have two-pronged strategies. One, of course, the state has to take care of their employment, but there is a limitation. But at the same time, there are opportunities also. We can immediately see their engagement in different fields. For instance, suppose, let me give you only one example that will clarify my point, what I'm talking about. That you see that this healthcare that is demanded by COVID is enormous. You know, you need not only treatment facilities, but also quarantine facilities. And then quarantine is much larger requirement than the treatment. So you need treatment, you need diagnostic, you need treatment, and you need actually the quarantine facilities. To run these facilities, you need huge manpower. Right now, we are in shortage of this manpower. For instance, suppose you need people who can run the quarantine facilities. You need people who can test on a door-to-door basis or village-to-village basis, like a surveillance system. So therefore, you need to have a huge section of manpower in the healthcare itself. So therefore, there is a scope of increasing some employment in the healthcare under a national program. And this is not going to be for only Assam, it is also going to be for the other states as well. So therefore, there is going to be a huge requirement for healthcare. State has to think about it. And most importantly, this requirement is going to be very huge in the sense that those people who maintain the quarantine and treatment facilities are also to be quarantined. So if you need 100, that means you need 300, because after 14 days or 21 days, you need to have a whole lot of new bunch of people. So therefore, the requirements are going to be very, very huge. So therefore, within the government system itself, you need a huge manpower for to run the facilities of healthcare itself. There are other facilities also. So obviously, one is the public system where we can accommodate a lot of people. The private also we can have, and the last one is the self-employment. Everybody is talking about self-employment, particularly in the agriculture and allied sectors. We are seeing where the gaps are. We are finding that livestock is the area where fishery and livestock are the areas where we can have huge employment potentials, self-employment potentials rather. These are to be supported, these are to be incentivized, these are to be given some policy incentives, so that people can take up these activities, people can establish themselves, and so on and so forth. So therefore, you need four-pronged strategies. One, the government should directly think about recruiting where they need people. Second, the private sector has to be roped in. Third, the self-employment opportunities are to be created. And fourth, how we can revive the economy quickly so that itself helps itself. So there are four ways of looking at the things. And if there is a political will and there is a political, there is a good planning and all these things, it is possible to mitigate the problem to a large extent. I'm not saying that everything will be done, but to a large extent, these things can be taken care of.
Another 3 more questions.
Yes.
Maybe the possible outcome if the present scenario persists for another few months, especially for Assam economy?
Yes, I mean, from the government side itself, the way the things are happening, the government is actually taking a position that probably till August, the public health and the other support system are to be completely strengthened. And if you look at the health minister's the press meet, then you will find that he is actually expecting these things to continue till November. So therefore, within the government system itself, there is the idea that probably this situation is going to last for another 4 or 5 months. It may not be in the form of lockdown, a complete lockdown as of now, because it creates a lot of problem. other kind of problem, and it actually deviates the concentration from the COVID care to economy. So therefore, it is going to be like this, but we have to be ready for another 5-4 months, it seems, as of now.
So another question, any outstanding contribution of SSGs for mitigating economic losses for COVID-19 pandemic?
This is an important issue. We have to distinguish this the SSGs in a different. SSGs are, SSGs. There are differences, and there are some joint liability groups also. There are some SSGs funded by government also. There are some NGO run SSGs. So therefore, the SSGs are of different types. But it is important to understand that SSGs are doing good things in some parts. They are making masks and all these things. That is fine. But at the same time, there should be some. We have already prescribed to the government to give some relief to the SSGs who are in bad shape. Let's see what happens. But for the time being, the credit or interest burden of SSGs, some of the SSGs are going to be huge. So that is to be considered, and we have given our suggestions. Government has constituted a ministerial committee headed by the finance minister himself. So let's see how it goes. But but thing is that we are seeing both positive opportunities for some of the SSGs, but at the same time there will be problems for other SSGs as well.
So another question, sir. What will you think about providing employment opportunities to the migrant laborers?
I already covered that question in the last question itself, that we can create some opportunities. Yeah.
Okay, sir. The last one is it true that any pandemic always hits the poor in high magnitude?
Yeah, that's what I've said. In my point on inequality, I have said that the virus does not recognize the rich and poor, but the system is such that your impact is going to be much higher on the poor than on the rich, and this is evident from the migrant labor situation itself. So therefore, this is very true that this pandemic is going to create or at least aggravate the inequality which is already there, and therefore we are seeing that this impact or the consequences are going to be very severe, and that is precisely my point also. So therefore, we have to see that how any policy actually try to see how this inequality is removed or how it can be reduced rather than increasing the inequality, and that is precisely the macroeconomic policy consideration for the government. You talk about monetary policy, you talk about fiscal policy, any package, the most important consideration at this moment for macroeconomic policy is that it should not aggravate the inequality which is already there. So you cannot actually afford more inequality to come up because of the policy. So policy, basic focus of this policy is to reduce the inequality which has been created earlier and which has been made worse by the pandemic. So policy consideration at this moment for the government is actually to bridge or reduce the inequality which is already there. So that is what is the policy consideration at this moment, and the government is it's not that government is not aware of this thing, but as of now it is not that clear from the government side. Two things from my personal point of view, the two things are very important at this moment. One, of course, is the inequality consideration in the macroeconomic thing, and the second important point is to give a sense of assurance to the people by the government. That you have to remove the uncertainties, you have to remove the insecurities from the people, so that people can feel more secure, assured to resume their duties and their activities. If they do not resume their activities, then economy is not going to revive. And as I've said, how quickly we can revive actually is the key. We have to revive it quickly. We have to live with COVID-19, and for that matter, from the public health as well as other front, government has to assure that there is a system in place, that you start working, and then we will, there is government, there's a government, and that will take care of the other thing. So that sense of assurance is the key. And the second, of course, as I have talked about, that inequality consideration in macroeconomic policy. We cannot afford to have any policy right now which will actually increase the inequality. We have to concentrate only on reducing the inequality. Then only anything positive will happen and we can revive the economy. And that is precisely the focal point for the government policy.
Sir, I have seen another question in the chat box. That, sir, will the step taken to unlock economy make things better or worsen them?
Okay, that is, there is a point where you have to take a call. Now we are in a very bad situation in a sense that there is a clear trade-off. One is the economy, second one is the health. So therefore you have to take a call in this, that if you go for lockdown, then economy suffers, and if you go for unlock, then health suffers. So there is a clear-cut trade-off as of now. That is what I have said. That what should be the policy? Policy should be that you need to have a system in place. System in place, and government should assure that even there is an unlock, that health is working, healthcare is there. You need not worry, and you have to reduce the mortality, which of course the Assam is having the lowest mortality right now. So therefore there is no mortality. Disease, if it is curable, okay, then it is okay. Because this is not the only disease that we have. We have Japanese encephalitis, we have malaria, we have other disease also. All right. So therefore, these are there. So long it is not fatal, so long there is no mortality, high mortality, it is curable, then we can take a call that okay, there can be unlocked, and provided there is a system in place to treat everyone. Okay. So therefore, this is what is right now is the focus of the government, it seems. And I think that hopefully it works, and then let's see how it goes.
Thank you, sir. We have almost finished all the questions.
Okay.
Thank you, sir, for your nice and productive presentation, and thank again that you are sharing with us your discussions on cumulative consequences, uncertainties, multidimensional consequences, probable growth rates in the coming days in Assam economy, impact on employment will definitely help us, and it will definitely help the policy makers in the coming days for policy prescriptions. So thank you, sir, joining with us. Now we are going to conclude our session, and today is the last session of this lecture series on health, economy, education, and career. So that is why I would like to request our principal, sir, to say something to the participants as well as to the resource persons. Thank you.
Thank you, Surajit. Very good evening to all. First of all, I would like to offer my sincere thanks to Professor Dr. Joydeep Baruah for his data-based, detailed and analytical presentation. It was really enriching and excellent. We really benefited by his lecture. And I would also like to offer my sincere thanks to everyone for successfully completing the special lecture series on health, economy, education, and career that was organized under the ICSSR funded major research project titled Sustainable Agriculture Practices Among the Tribes of Northeast India, that was awarded to Dr. Surajit Soikia, who is the coordinator of the webinar and special lecture series. He is the assistant professor in the Department of Economics, Gargaon College. I would also like to offer my sincere gratitude to all the resource persons who have spared their valuable times to deliver their speeches from 20th June to 23rd June. I would specially thank Dr. Buljit Buragohai. He is the principal of Gateway Institute of Hotel Management, Tezpur, and Dr. Wasif Rosid. He is a young doctor from Sibsagar. Dr. Pranjal Buragohai, assistant professor in the Department of Education, Dibrugarh University, and our today's resource person, Dr. Joydeep Baruah, associate professor of OKD, Institute of Social Science, Guwahati, for his brilliant and excellent speech on challenges to the economy during COVID-19 with special reference to Assam. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the participants, the faculty members from various colleges, the research scholars, and the students for their participation. And without your participation, this lecture series would not have been a successful one. Moreover, I would also like to offer my sincere thanks to the entire organizing committee, especially Dr. Surajit Soitya and his team. And I think with your energetic and enthusiastic endeavor, we can successfully hold this lecture series. And I hope this lecture series has really benefited all of us, and looking forward for your kind cooperation in our future endeavors also. Thank you all. Hope you all you have enjoyed our lecture series that was organized by Gargaon College from June 20 to 23rd. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for your words to the participants as well as to the resource person. Thank you, Joydeep Baruah, sir, for your nice presentation again. And we are going to conclude the session right now. Now, one announcement is there, is that all the participants will get feedback form through Google form. They need to fill up it. We will send a link to the WhatsApp group. Hope you will fill up it, and regarding certificate, we will discuss in the group. Thank you all. Good night to everyone.